part of the issue that some of you may have is that for doing MIDI in Pro Tools, you really have to be sort of like a keyboard player or have some sort of keyboard skills. You don't have to have great keyboard skills, but you do have to understand some basic things about a keyboard. So what I want to do today is I want to show you some strategies that you can use to make things sound a little bit better if you can't play keyboards well. So what I've got here is a very simple little piece for 3 tracks. And I'm going to work on editing this. All right. So let's just pretend that this is where you've gotten so far in your assignment, right? I know I said to do it in 2 tracks, but I've got 3 tracks here. So I'm going to work on editing this to make it sound better. I'm going to show you some editing techniques. And then I'm going to work on making the piano part be a little bit more interesting without playing it. So first thing I want to do is I want to go to the setup here, and we're going to go to preferences. And yes, okay, so this is set up correctly. We're going to do some color coding for our tracks. So we want to make sure that the default track color coding is tracks and MIDI channels, and the default clip color coding is the track color. So what that means is that this is where the track color is set up, and these are called clips. All this information that's in the track. This is a clip, and this is another clip over here. So it doesn't matter how long or how big they are. Every little piece of information that's in a track, which is this area that goes left to right, is a clip. So I want to color code this. So notice I've got the melody on the top, and I've got the piano in the middle and the bass on the bottom. And let me make this all a little bit bigger so it's easier for you to see at home. So to color code something, there's a bar right here. And if you have in your setup here track color selected, then when you double click here, a palette shows up. And I've got this is the one that I clicked, so this is the one that's active, and I'm going to make this purple. I'm going to click on the piano, and maybe I'll make that dark red, and the bass, maybe I'll make that green, darker green. What I would counsel you all to do with MIDI tracks is to avoid this area here, the top row from like maybe the yellow over to this blue, if it's a MIDI track, because it makes certain information in the MIDI editor very difficult to see. All right, so I've color coded my tracks, and this track is selected, so I want to deselect that. So I'm going to hold the Option key down and click on that. So I want to look at the melody now. So I want to open up the MIDI editor. Now, if I've gone over some of this stuff, it's always good to go over it again. So down here, there is a line and an upward facing arrow or triangle. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to open up the MIDI editor. Now, yours may open up with this bottom area engaged. Just simply click on this downward. There's a downward triangle at the bottom over here. Just click on that to close that. So let me talk about this a little bit. This is the MIDI editor. And you notice that all these notes are selected. To deselect those notes, just click right up here in the ruler. Over here, this area here, this is the tracks list. It tells you what tracks you have. You can resize it by hovering over the right border. Notice the mouse turns into a cross, and then you can click and drag to the left or to the right, depending upon how big the name is of your track. These are fairly small, so I can move that. I want to be able to see. Now, this is a list of the tracks. I've got melody, I've got a click track, I've got melody, piano, and bass. Now, there are these columns here, right? And unfortunately, I can't make this any bigger for you to see. So the first column is a bunch of gray dots. If you click on one of those dots, it gets filled in, and that track becomes active to edit. And you notice that there's a little pencil over here, which lets you know that that's the track to be edited. So if I click the piano track, notice the pencil goes here. So let me go back to the melody track, because that's what we're going to edit first. Now notice here, this is the track color. All right. This column here tells you what kind of a track. So this first one, that's the click track, that's downward facing arrow. I believe that that's an aux track, but we'll get into that later on. But the ones that are most important for us today is there's an orange square with like little piano keys in there. And that lets you know that it's an instrument track. So that's the type of track. And then you've got the names of the track. Now you can reorder the track. So if I click on the bass and drag up, so notice I've clicked and I'm still holding it down. I can drag this up and now the bass is on top. If I click and drag it down, now the bass is on the bottom. All right. So that's the list. If we look over here in our MIDI editor, we notice that we have a toolbar, which is very similar to the toolbar up here. But when you're in the MIDI editor, this is the toolbar that you'll use. Here are our edit modes. We're going to use grid mode, so we're going to click on that and make it blue. And we're going to have our grid activated, so that needs to be clicked so that it's lime. And it's at 240. We're going to leave it there. Now, the way that you know that this is active is if you look, and it's hard to see on Zoom, but I'm going to tell you what to look for. Around the toolbar, there is a yellow or gold line that highlights the toolbar that lets you know it's active. If I click here, that yellow border is around this toolbar, lets you know that this is active. I click back here and then this becomes active. So these are the tools that you would use to edit on this page. Now, if you have set up so that your A and Z is, your edit keyboard focus is on, when you click into this area here to edit here, it becomes active here as well. So that means your R can zoom out and your T can zoom in. Also, a couple of things. Over here, there is a plus, a minus, and a plus sign. And right here, there's this little bar here. You can scroll around. Now, I have the mouse here. I can go left and right using the mouse. You guys have trackpads on your laptop. So I can, if I, whoops. Right, hold two fingers down and I can scroll to the left and the right. And I can hold two fingers down and I can go up and down. All right. I'm not as good with the trackpad as I am with the mouse. So I can scroll with the mouse. Also, depending upon how much information you have in here, There might be a scroll bar in this. Oh, you can't. My photo, myself is in the way. Over in this bar here, depending upon how much information is in here, there also might be a scroll bar like there is here. Then also right here, there are two lines. If you click on the bottom of this box, see how the notes get smaller and they can get bigger by clicking on the top. So that's MIDI zoom in and out. All right. So I want to work on this melody track here. And I want to teach you guys how to put things right on the grid. Now, this is a philosophical discussion. I'm going to explain what the grid is in a minute, but there are people, and I'm one of them, who think that the gridding of music has been abused and has sort of taken the life out of music. But if you can't play things in well enough to make them sound really good, using the MIDI tools to edit to get a nice performance, there's nothing wrong with that. All right. I was a professional keyboard player in Manhattan for 30 years. I can play the piano. I still edit with MIDI all the time to make my performances sound better. So there's no shame in that. So let me disabuse you of that thought. Okay. And if I go too fast and you miss something, open your mic up and ask me a question and ask me to go over something again. All right? Because it's important that you get it rather than me to give you tons of information. All right. So I'm going to zoom in here. And if we look on our ruler here at the top here, we have a number here that says 1/1, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, then 2/1, 2/2. So what this is, these are bars and beats. So they're analogous to this up here. Now I'm going to open up the big counter window so that I can explain this a little bit easier to you, because I can make this ginormous and it's easy for you to see. So this first digit is the bar number. The second digit is the beat. And these third three digits are the subdivisions within a beat. So now, so I know there's a lot of graduate students and music majors, but there are MAP students who have varying degrees of music education. So I'm going to be speaking to them right now. And don't be offended if I'm telling you stuff that you already know. I'm just giving the information. So if your beat is here, and you're counting it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. The numbers that I'm counting, they would be considered in 4/4 time quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And each one of those is the beat of the measure. Now, there are faster notes that I can play, and those would be called subdivisions. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So instead of having 4, I had 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Those ands are the subdivision of the beat. So they cut the beat in half. So if we've got 4 beats and we cut each beat in half, that gives us 2 subdivisions per beat. 2 times 4 is 8. And yes, I'm sorry, part of music is math. It's not all math, but numbers are an important part of music. Not an important part of soul, but you're having some soul with your music and feeling. But just this technical stuff right here, you do need to understand a little bit. So in Pro Tools and most other DAWs, digital audio workstations like Logic, like Reaper, Cubase, Ableton. The space between the subdivisions between the beat are called ticks. In music, they're called eighth notes, 16th notes, eighth note triplets, 32nd notes, quintuplets, all sorts of numerator, denominator, 1 over 8, 16 over 4 over 16 would be one beat, 8 over 32 would be one beat. But in DAWs, they're called ticks. And this is a descendant from the hardware sequencers where they had things called PPQ, or pulse per quarter note. And first hardware sequencers, Midi sequencers that were available in the 80s, had a resolution of 24 PPQ, so that every beat was chopped up into 24 individual slices, and an eighth note would be 12 of those slices, right? Fast forward to today, and every digital audio workstation has a resolution of 960 of these pulses for each beat, which gives you a greater rhythmic accuracy. So the numbers that you need to know are 000, 240, 480, and 720. So let me go about it this way. 000 is the first part of a beat. If I was doing eighth notes, which is two subdivisions of the beat, there would be 480, because that's half of 960. So this would be bar 1. Hold on. Okay. So this would be bar 1, beat 1, and 480 is the second eighth note. Bar 2, beat 2, notice it goes back to, this is the first eighth note of beat 2, and 480 is the second eighth note of beat 2. Now, if we were going to chop that up into 16th notes, and just, I'm not going to give you a test on this, but these are things that you should just know. Like, there's not going to be a written test where you're going to have to write all this stuff out for me, but you should know this stuff. So if I was going to do 16th notes, then I break 960 into 4 equal parts, and that would be 240 subdivisions each. So if I go to measure 2, let's say, beat 1, the first 16th note is the 3 zeros. 240 is the second 16th note. 480 is the third 16th note, and it is also the second eighth note. And then the last one is 720. That's the last, that's the fourth 16th note. And then it goes up to 959, and then it starts all over again at 0. So that's a little bit confusing, is that when I say there's 960 ticks, you think it goes up to 960, but no, it goes up to 959 because it starts at 0. So from 0 to 959 is actually 960 digits. From 1 to 960 is 960 digits. So that can be a little bit confusing. Okay. So how does that help us out with music? Now, notice this here. If I hover right here, I can click and drag up. So right at this borderline here, I can click and drag up, make it bigger. I can make it smaller, right? So that's really good. Now, that helps us because if I zoom in here, you'll notice that the timeline, what's visible here, changes. So now you could see the subdivisions between the beat. And I've got the grid set up to 240 or a 16th note. So you can see 0, 240, 480, 720, and 0. All right, now I'm sure this is going to be difficult to see on your Zoom screens. But hopefully if you watch the review video, it'll be a little bit easier to see. All right, so let's take a listen to this melody. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit right here, the S button and solo that. So this is the only instrument I'm going to hear. So this is a little bit pedantic, but I want you to learn some mouse skills. Notice that this is beat 4 right here where the bar is flashing. Playback head right here. And this note comes in too early. So if I go up to this area here, and when you open up Pro Tools, all 3 of these might be selected. That's the Smart tool. I don't want you to use that. I want you to click here and use what's called the Trimmer tool. So if I just hover here, notice the trimmer is facing to the left. If I hover over this note and get close to the next grid, it switches directions. And if I click, it'll snap it to the grid. Whoops, excuse me. Sorry. It's like a Ferris wheel. And then this is too short, so I'm just going to snap that out and then just going to go through these and fix these. And this is a skill that I want you to learn how to do. And you see how I'm just going through here quickly fixing all these. Now there's a manual way to do this, and I'll teach that, a little bit of that, but that's really for the next class. So if I can go through here, it's very quick, right? Just dragging out, and I want this one to stop here, a little breath. Now, what I would say is that I'm eyeballing this, so some of these might be a little bit, whoops. Right, I'm just going through this really quickly, and maybe I'll have a little breath there. Great. So now in a matter of a minute, I've kind of cleaned up the rhythm. Now, there are a couple of things that you should know. Each one of these on this piano roll, each one of these little MIDI notes here is actually an event. And the event has several parameters. It has a start time, or a note on, an end time, note off. It's in a position on the timeline. It has a pitch, which pitch it is. And it also has something called MIDI velocity. All right? Now, what is velocity? Well, let's pop out my keyboard here. And let's do this. So this is the piano sound that I've got a record enabled now. And you notice that as I play, it's getting louder. Right? And you think I'm hitting it harder. I am hitting it harder. But what actually is happening, excuse me a second, is that the speed or the velocity of the key going down is increasing. And what that does for this particular sound is it makes it louder. That gets programmed in different sounds to do different things, but the most often thing it's used for is to make a sound louder or softer. So that's MIDI velocity, the speed of which a note goes down. And that's represented numerically between 1 and 127, or maybe 128, depending upon the software. All right, so there's that many spots of dynamics. That's the current MIDI spec. There's going to be a new MIDI spec coming out at some point in the next couple of years where there'll be more resolution because computers can handle it now. And software can handle it now. But for right now, that's another number, 127 levels of dynamics. So if we are set up properly here in our preferences, MIDI note color shows velocity, which we went over in the first class. Then when we look here, if we, oh, sorry, let me, my fault. Let me do that again. So if I don't switch screens, let me know. I'm so involved here. It's like a television production. We go to Setup and we go to Preferences. And our color coding, oh, MIDI note color shows velocity right here. You could see that some of these are different colors. Like you could clearly see the last note is a different color than this note here. That's because this has a softer, lower velocity level. That means it'll sound softer. So I want to phrase this so that there's some dynamics. So what I could do is I can use the grabber tool, which is this tool here. And if I hold down the Command key and I hover over one of the notes, see now the grabber tool looks like a cross in the edit window. If I hold down the Command key and hover over a note, you notice that it turns to a trimmer. And if I click, when I click on this, up in this corner here, you'll see a number. And that number is the value of your MIDI velocity. So right now it says 76. So if I wanted to make this a little bit softer, you can see that that's now a lighter shade of purple. And if I can phrase this out a little bit. So now that I'm listening to that, I'm going to take my trimmer tool and I'm going to leave a little space here between, right, between the two phrases at the opening. And then as I go down the scale, I want each note to get softer. So I'm just going to... And I'm just going to eyeball these. And I'm going to leave a little breath here, right? I'm going to make that. This note's a little soft. I want this last phrase to be more powerful. And I want my last note to be nice and powerful. All right. So that's good. I'm going to save this. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save as, and this will be version 2. Okay. So let's look at the piano. Now, let me show you a key command so that all of this fits in the window. Right? That's Control, Option, and A. So I wanted to get that out, Control, Option, A. All right, I'm actually going to zoom in. I'm going to listen to this. So I've got this selected. I'm going to solo it. Now, you can see that the notes end here, but they continue on in sound. And that's because I'm using the sustain pedal. All right, so that's keeping the sounds going. So with this track, there's a couple of things that we can do, a couple of ways we can play this, right? So I'm going to do this two ways, okay? The first way is that we're going to play these as block chords like this. And I want to voice this. And let me show you what I mean by that. So the first thing is that you can notice, you could see that the velocities are all over the place. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to them. So I want to make all the velocities be the same to start with. So let me show you how I would do that. So my cursor, my grabber tool, I'm in here. And so I'm going to use Command A and I'm going to select all of them. And notice that all those notes are highlighted. I'm going to hold the Command key down and I'm going to click and drag up a couple of times. So now they're all at the same level. Well, not this one. That must have been really soft. So I just double checked that. Okay. But they're all way too loud now, right? There's banging. So what I'm going to do is select all. Now I'm going to bring them all down quite a bit. So now they're all softer. And now you can hear all the notes very nicely. And that's nice. But if you're a pianist and you're playing a series of chords like that, you're taught to voice the chords. And what do I mean by that? And this is learning how to mix while you're working. If I were to play something, let's say I play a few chords. Right? I played them all at the same volume. But if I was going to play this properly, right, I exaggerated that effect. And what I'm doing is I'm putting more weight onto my pinky. So the pinky note is going down faster and it's making it louder, bringing out the melody. That's called voicing, right? So if I were to play something more complex, right, you can hear the melody in that. So we went over this a little bit. I think we did, those of you that were at the class last Monday, the extra class, might have saw that. So if I was going to play something, right, you can hear the melody being spoken when I'm playing. So how do you do that here? Well, you do it one of two ways. You either make the top note of every one of those things louder, or you make the other notes softer. And that depends upon, the approach you take depends upon the piece that you're working on or the effect that you want to achieve, right? Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to make sure the grabber is selected, and I'm just going to click. And now notice I've let go of the mouse, and I'm going to reposition it. And I'm just going to select the bottom three notes of each of these chords. Right? I'm just, as long as you hold down the Shift key, you'll be able to do this. So those are all selected. Now notice I've let go of the mouse and everything stays selected. I'm going to hold down my Command key And I'm going to hover over any one of these notes. And I'm going to click and drag down the velocity. And that you can hear the melody that's in that chord progression that I'm playing. All right. So let's hear how that sounds. I'm going to close this for the time being with the melody. Right, so you can hear that there's a melody in the piano and that there's a melody in the melody instrument. Now, look, this is very basic introductory techniques. This kind of work, this can get very deep with MIDI and doing all this work. I'm just giving you guys like, you know, the basic fundamental things. Now, I'm going to come back to the piano. Let's leave the piano where it is for the time being. And let's work on our bass track. So let's solo the bass track and let's take a look. Okay, so I could quickly go through here and clean up some of these rhythms. I'm not going to worry about the note off. I'm just going to make sure the note on is right on it with this particular track. Now, right here, there's a problem. You see that? I've got two notes. So if I use my grabber tool and click here, that's the wrong note. I can just delete that. And there's another one right here. So I can just click and delete that. And I am going to change the end of the last note because I want it to be tight with the melody in the piano. So that's fine. Now I want to listen to this against the piano to see how the sound balances out. So the bass is a little bit too loud, and there's two ways to deal with that. Let me show you the first way, and then I'll show you the second way. I can bring down velocity. So everything is selected, right? Or if it doesn't, you can just Command A. I can hold down, I can go to my grabber, click and drag down and make the velocity softer. All right, let me undo that, which is Command Z. And the other way that you can work this, now, if you notice here, this is the I/O column. This is your input and your output. This is your audio volume. All of these are audio volumes and audio pan. I want those all to stay where they are. When you're working, I don't want you to touch these, all right, for right now. We're working in MIDI right now. And this is your MIDI volume and MIDI pan. So the bass is a little bit loud. So right here, I'm going to go to the MIDI volume. I'm going to click, and I'm going to bring that down about 15 or 20 numbers. And that sounds better to me. And I'll listen to all of them together. Whoops, excuse me. So the melody's a little loud, so I'm going to bring the melody down. Too soft now. Bring it up a little. Okay, so if you're an undergraduate map student and you did a piece and it was about like this, and you know there was another track added of something else, that would be pretty good, a pretty good first attempt. So now let's look at the piano part again. So I'm going to pretend that I can play some chords on the piano, but I can't really, my fingers don't move, and I want to make a more interesting piano part. And you can do that with MIDI editing. And let me show you. All right. So now just remember, we used the sustain pedal. I used the sustain pedal to hold all my notes over. So I'm not going to touch that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to clean up some of these note starts. Right, this will take about a minute. And there's a reason I'm doing this, especially for the first one, the lowest note. It's very important. All right, just going through there, cleaning everything up. This one looks pretty good. Right, just cleaning all this up. Almost done. Great. All right, so there are a couple of kinds of accompaniment figures on piano. Broken arpeggios. Right? There's right. I mean, there's so many. There's, you know, whoa. Right? Somebody blowing the line over that. So there's all sorts of accompaniment figures. Right? Comping figures. But what we're going to do here is something very simple. We're going to create a broken arpeggio, and we're going to do that using our trim tool. So I want this to be eighth notes, right? So eighth notes are at 480. So I can just snap these like this. Whoops, I didn't get that correct. See that? Right? And you could do this so that and you could reverse direction if you want. And you could even do something like this. Maybe not. This note here is too loud, so I'm going to bring that down. Yeah, that's better. Right, so you can break up the pattern. And then let me show you another trick you can do, all right? So we're working in grid mode, which means that everything gets snapped to the grid, and you set the resolution of the grid. I need a little beverage. So the other edit mode that I want to work with you on till we get to audio is slip mode. And that's this green one right here. So I just clicked on that. And that allows you to get in between the grid. So we're working with slip and grid. And when you're on grid, make sure it's the blue one. If it becomes purple, just click the grid again and it'll turn into blue. All right. Okay, great. So what if I wanted, right, instead of it being like a quick roll? Well, you can do that. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to go to slip mode and I'm just going to I'll do that here. And you play around with the distances. You can make it sound however you want. And then you can go back to grid mode and all right. So, and then I could continue on with the piano as I want, for the rest of the track. But that kind of thing will help you out if you can't play keyboards. Now, I want to take a minute here. And I want to talk a little bit about bass lines. So what do bass lines do, right? Bass lines anchor a track harmonically. And they also add a little bit of a counter at times, a counter line to a melodic phrase or a harmonic phrase. And they also add rhythm. So let's say that I've got a chord progression that goes like this. Well, let's just say that I was going to play very simple, right? So that's basically just an F chord to a C chord. So I want to add a little rhythm. So I would have a bass line doing something like this. Right? So I'm staying on the note, the root note of the chord. I'm not moving anywhere. Now, let's say I want to add a little motion to that. Well, what I want to do is I want to target and phrase into the next chord. So what do I mean by that? So I've got, and the next chord is this, right? So what if I went, right? You can get very complex with it, but adding bass lines can add a lot of really nice energy to your track. So on this particular piece that I've got here, the bass is very simple, right? So let's see if we can work on the bass line a little bit and make it better. Now, there's a whole thing about working bass and drums, which I can get into if you'd like. No, I will actually, because I'm going to do a little bit of drum and bass programming. So let's take a listen. So what if I wanted to do something that was a little bit like a heartbeat? Doom, 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 right? So that's bum, 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 bum. So that's one, two, and, one, two, and. So it's coming in on the second eighth note of beat 2. So how do I do that here without playing it over again? So we're going to now employ our third tool for the day, which is the selector tool. That's this right here. And we're going to learn how to separate things out. So the second eighth note of beat 2 is right here. And this is a key command to learn. It's command and the letter E. And see how that separates that out? And I'm just going to make a little, click it over a little bit so there's a little space. Right? And then I want the same thing on measure 2. And I just want to make a little space between all the notes. So let's listen to that. As opposed to that long pedantic note. Right? So that can be done very quickly. Whoops. Now, right here, we're going from this note, which is a C. You could tell by it because this C gets illuminated here, down to this, oh wait, I'm sorry, from this F, sorry, down to this D. Well, what if I wanted to move a note down and make sort of like a little stairway step to go down there? Well, let me separate that out at beat 3, and then use my grabber tool, and then make this longer, and then now I've sort of made right? And so I've got now and then, you know, you could continue on with this all the way through the piece. So I'm showing you different ways to edit MIDI to enhance the piece of music you're making by just getting some basic notes in and then using your imagination to transform what you're seeing into a much more impactful performance. So are there any questions on this? Is there anything that like you didn't understand that I need to repeat? Please ask me now so I can go over it again. Anybody out there? You all guys all like in the other room having Zoom on?
No, I'm here.
Any questions?
What I'm going to do is for now, I'm just going to listen and watch. And then when I use it on my own Pro Tools, I'll consult the video just to, you know, do it while I'm doing it. Because it's hard for me to do it and then switch back to your screen to make sure I'm doing it right.
No, I understand that. It's because when I learn stuff off of YouTube, I usually watch YouTube on an iPad. Okay, Eve, I knew you were there. I
That's
usually
actually a good idea.
I usually watch it on my iPad or on my laptop, and then because I'm on my desktop now, you know, but I watch it on a second screen, you know, and then I can stop it and, you know, work on the thing here and then start it up again and just go through it slowly. And that's that. I've learned so much by doing that technique. To do everything on one computer is it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, especially with a 13-inch. But I'll just steal my wife's laptop tonight and put it on the side.
Yeah. You know, the 13-inch thing, which is what everybody has, is so hard to learn on, which is, you know, one of the downsides. Well, there's many downsides to us not meeting in person. I don't get to meet you people and, you know, see you and, you know, get to really know you as people, which is a drag for me. But we have iMacs with big screens in the lab, so it's easier to see and follow along. But what I will say is that the videos, the screen capture videos that I can make here are infinitely better than the ones I can make at school because of the software I have in this computer that we don't have in my home school, in this school. So that is a benefit of meeting like this. All right. So let me just reiterate a few things, okay? If you want to adjust volume, leave this column alone. It's this guy over here, the MIDI volume.
Professor, can you share your screen?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let me go over that again. So if I was just double checking to see if anybody was watching. Just kidding. All right, so this is a negative as far as adjusting volume for MIDI tracks, this column here. It's this here is MIDI volume. Now, there's one other MIDI thing, and if you're listening to music, music's not always coming out of the center, right? Sometimes when you're listening, as you noticed when we did the musical blueprinting, some stuff is a little bit in the left, some stuff is a little bit in the right. So when you're doing, most of you are probably doing a pop song. Well, in contemporary pop music, if you're listening to some of the old songs that I gave you, stuff that was recorded in the 1960s, most of that stuff was mixed to mono because the method of listening to music back then was AM car radios, which was coming out of a little speaker. So there was not a lot of panning back left and right. That wasn't until FM came in vogue. And also when 8-track and 16-track recorders came. But all that stuff, like if you listen to Beatles from the 1960s, the stereo mixes, you'll hear like 3 or 4 instruments over here, and then like a solo vocal over here. And it's really disjointed. And that's because they didn't really care about the stereo mixes that much. They spent a lot of time on the mono, meaning everything coming out of one speaker mix, because that was what in England, most people were listening either on cars or they had like a little portable Victrola with one little tiny speaker in it, and they didn't have stereo systems. That didn't happen until the 70s, really, late 60s and 70s. So, but in contemporary music, right, when we're listening to it, you'll notice almost always that the bass and the kick drum and the snare drum and the lead vocal are almost always in the middle. And then you'll hear other things like a guitar might be here and a shaker or a tambourine might be over here. So in our little example here, what I might do, and again, I said the melody's always in the middle. Well, we only have 3 tracks here. So you won't be able to hear this because Zoom is mono. But if you're listening back to this with headphones on YouTube, I'm going to take the melody and I want it to be a little bit on the left. So what I'm going to do is right here, there is something called pan. These are also pan controls for audio. Please do not use these. I don't want you to really touch this until we get into audio files. We're working in MIDI right now. So I'm going to pan the melody a little bit to the left, and I'm going to pan the piano a little bit to the right. So I'm going to balance them out. So this is 35 to the left, and this is 36 to the right. That's close enough. Now, what's interesting about when you do that, and you can't hear this now, I'm going to let it play a little bit. And when you get to this point, listen and try to determine, like I had the piano balanced really well when it was in the middle, but now that it's over a little bit on the right, take a listen and tell me what you think. So, okay. So now I'm going to tell you that the piano is too loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this volume here and just bring it down a little bit. So what happened is that when I moved it over to the right, there were no other instruments there really to get in the way of the piano sounding. So you hear it more clearly, right? When everything was right smack in the center of the stereo field, right? It was, they all were competing for the same space. So if you move things one to the left and one to the right, there's nothing really over there to get in the way. And so, there's nothing really over there or over, let's see, there we go, or over there to get in the way. All right. So you'll have to rebalance the volumes once you do that. All right. So let me save this. And all right. So this is another bit I did, and this is different music. Okay, so let's do our color coding, right? We're going to work on this. Oops, excuse me. Drums. I'm just going from left to right. You can choose whatever colors you like.
Professor, can you show me how you get the color coding that palette out again?
Mm-hmm. First of all, you have to make sure, notice the edit window view selector, that's this little triangle right up here. So if I click on there, make sure the bottom one is selected, track color, right? So make sure there's a check mark there. And then if you just, right here on the border that's found on the left-hand side of this area here, you double click there and the palette shows up.
Okay, cool. Got it. Thank you.
Now, you can get a little bit more fancy with the palette if you want. See right here, there's like a little rainbow colored thing. If I click on that, then the saturation and the brightness become active. And I can notice how now this area is all colored as well. And I can make it a little bit more pastel looking. So, you can really make the stuff look nice. So now, let's take a quick listen to this, and I want to show you another technique. Okay. So my drums end right here at bar 5, correct? And the track goes on. So how do I get that to finish up the rest of the song? Well, I'm going to simply highlight it. So I've got make sure your grid is on, okay? I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to select these 4 measures. And then I'm going to use, there are two more key commands. Command and D for duplicate. And then if you do that again, okay, and I'm going to undo that. Or Option and the letter R, and that's repeat. So I'm going to repeat that twice. And that fills in the rest of my drum kit, except I need to just clean up the ending. See, now my drums keep going, so let's look at the end here. So let me delete this whole bit. And let me open this up.
Professor, can you do that again?
The repeat part?
Yes, repeat part.
Mm-hmm. So there's 2 ways to do this, right? So I'm going to click. I want to duplicate or repeat all the drums. But notice the clip keeps going on. I could even just delete that by highlighting it and hitting the delete key. So I can just click and drag, or if you've got the grabber selected, you could just double click on that. But you want to make sure that you have the number of measures, the exact number of measures. So I like to click and drag, right? So I'm clicking and I'm holding the click down and I'm just dragging. And I've selected the first 4 bars. Make sure your grid is on. And to duplicate, it's Command D. And you can just keep doing that over and over again. You know, if you hold down the D key, see what happens? It goes insane, right? And I'm just holding the Z key down to undo all that. So watch, I'll do that again. So I'm just going to hold the Command key and then press the D key and hold that down, and it just duplicates. Or you could just tap it a few times. So that's one way. And let's get everything back in view again. And the other one is Option R, brings up repeats, and I'm going to do 2 repeats. Just type 2 into that field. And that clean that up. Now so is that better? Yay? Nay?
Yes, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, so let me go to the end here. And because at the end, there's this little bop, 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 bop figure. All right. So I'm going to open up my drum editor. And I'm going to listen from about measure 11. So the way I do that is I just hover up here on the time ruler, and I just click right anywhere that I want to start. And notice the playback head, which is this blinking line, moves there. So I hit the space key. Okay, so right here, there's that figure, dot, 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 dot. So I'm just going to select all of this and delete it. Okay? Now, I'm going to use this note here to play a part in. And let me show you how you can draw a note in. All right? So I'm going to use so we worked with these 3 tools. We used the selector, we used the trim tool and the grabber, and the last one is the pencil tool. So I'm just going to click on the pencil tool. And notice that when I'm here in the toolbar, it's an arrow. When I'm here, it's a selector. But when I get down into the edit page, it turns into a pencil. So I want to hit this C 3 times. So if I just click here on the 8th notes, it draws the notes in. And they all draw in at the same velocity. So let me do that again. So I need to figure out the note that I want to play. So I'm going to click on the keyboard. So this time I'm going to hit this one, right? That's an E. So I want to draw that in. So I'm going to make sure that my grid is set up to the note value that I want. Those are 8th notes, but I'm just going to leave it at 240 because it's a drum. It's going to hit and the sound's just going to decay. It's not going to sustain out. It'll continue sustaining even after the note ends if it's a cymbal or something like that. So I'm going to click on the pencil and then I'm just going to draw in bop, 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 bop. And then if I want to do some dynamics, I can go ba, 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 right? So I can make this first one, holding down the command key, click. I'm going to bring the velocity up. I'm going to bring the velocity down. Oh, down a little bit, and then up. Let me exaggerate that. Well, that's not really doing what I want, but a little bit. And then, let's say I want to add a kick drum there on that last note. I like this, and I want to add a kick drum. I could use the pencil tool and draw one in, but what I can also do is click on this, hold the Option key down, and drag. And now both notes are there. So that's a good technique So now let me show you this in another way. All right, so I want to make a piano part, but I can't play piano. Well, I can draw a note in, so that's a C, and let's say I want to make a chord. Hold down the Option key, click and drag up, let go, click and drag up, let go. I'm still holding the Option key down, but I'm letting go of the mouse. Click and drag up, right? And then if I want to make a rhythmic chord, I can click and select all those with the grabber tool, hold the Option key, and then let go of the mouse and hold the Option key down, let go of the mouse, and right. So there are many, many ways to enter MIDI notes into any DAW. And what I just did there, you can do with, it's the same technique in Logic, GarageBand, Reaper, Ableton, Cubase, Digital Performer, Studio One. It's the same technique. And then you can also, you know, if you want to do some fun stuff. All right, so continuing on with this one, let me delete that because we're not going to use it. I just wanted to show you more work with the pencil tool and drawing notes in, which is not something I teach much, but perhaps I should because it is actually a useful tool. So, excuse me. I'm going to hit this M button right here on the piano and the pad, and I'm going to mute those. And I want to listen to the bass and the drum. What am I listening for? Well, we're not doing fixing the rhythms this time. We did that already. I showed you that. I want to go more into balancing. Okay? So what am I listening for? I want the bass to be there, but I don't want it to cover up the kick drum. I need to hear a really sharp attack from the kick drum. And right now, the bass is way too loud. So I'm going to leave the velocity alone, and I'm going to show you how I work on balancing the volume. So I'm going to go to the volume right here, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to bring that way down so that it's too soft. Right? Okay, so I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to click as it's playing, and I'm going to just listen. I might even shut my eyes, and I'm going to bring the volume up until it's where I think it should be. Right, so you can hear the bass now, but you can also hear the snap of the kick drum. All right, so now I'm going to add the piano. And I'm going to do the same thing with the piano and see how it fits in with the bass and the drum. Remember, this is the same kind of thing that I was talking about that Coltrane did when he would listen to music. He's listened to all the individual parts and he'd learn them, and then he'd see how they fit in together. Well, we're seeing how all these fit in together with volume to mix our track. So it's too loud. Do the same thing, make it too soft. That's better. And now we've got our pad. And if I wanted to, I could pan the piano a little bit to one side and pad a little bit to the other side. Yeah, that doesn't sound good. The pads should really be like in the middle because they're sort of like a nice, thick, sort of like blanket that wraps the track together. So I'm going to leave everything in the middle for this one. All right. Okay, so let's talk about your assignment. So I'm going to write this down to be a little, so you'll have it specifically, and then I'm going to clean it up on Google Classroom. So by tomorrow, it'll be up there clearly. So for next week, I'd like you to finish up your piece, make it like about undergraduate students, make it about 90 seconds long, graduate students about 2 minutes long, so you can copy and paste like I showed you there, duplicate. So what do I mean by copy and paste? I didn't talk about that. Let me show you. So, oh wait, I want to keep that because I did all that work there. So let's say I wanted to copy this and paste it right here. So just click and drag and then Command C and then paste. Right? Or so if I wanted to duplicate, if I wanted this measured over here, I could copy and paste it there. So, you can, if you've hopefully got the beginning of your track done, and then you can just use these techniques to stretch it out. What I like for undergraduate students is to do this for 4 tracks, and for graduate students for 6 tracks. All right. So graduate students are going to be 2 minutes. If it's a minute 50, that's fine. If it's a minute 45, that's fine. If you're undergraduate, if it's a minute 20, that's fine. Just expand it out so it's a little bit more than just a basic beginning. And expand your track out, six instruments for graduate students and 4 instruments for undergraduate students. So you'd have a melody, you'd have a bass, you'd have a piano, maybe you'd have a rhythm part. And I want you to do everything in either mini grand or expand. So let me spend a few minutes going over expand and showing you how that works, all right? So Command-Shift-N, and make sure all your instrument tracks are stereo. All right, so this is expand. It's in your air instruments. It's either in instruments at the bottom. Yes, I've got a lot of instruments, right? Towards the bottom. Or it's in your air music technology, depending upon how you've set up Pro Tools. So this is the GUI of Expand 2. And basically what Expand 2 is, it's called a rompler, meaning that they've got a couple of gigabytes worth of sample-based sounds pre-programmed in here. There are some modifications that you can make to the sound, and I don't think that I'll be going into that too much in this class. I'm going into it in Audio MIDI 1. But basically the way that you select sounds is one of 2 ways. If you look here, there's something called a preset. And if you click right below that, it says factory default. So this is what's called the librarian menu. And notice you can drag this around by clicking on that white border at the top. You can't resize this, so it's stuck at one size. So if you click here, another menu comes up and you can scroll up and down. And there are all these folders. And each one of these folders has sounds in them. And they're done by category. So let me record, enable this. So let's say a soft pad. So let's do Heavenly Bell pad. You just click on that. Some of these synthy sounds are really good in this. Some of the orchestral sounds are a little weak. This needs to be updated by Avid, but they've got other ideas. This was good 15 years ago when it came out. So, I mean, there's all sorts of, let's see, Tyne type pad. There's more sounds. We can go to huge pads, glitter pad. What's this? Right, so I'm only going to play one note. It's instant movie score. Huge pads. Boom, 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 boom. You can do it like a trance track with that. Yeah. And then, you know, there's...
Professor?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
Okay, so what I struggled with the most was finding the sound that I wanted. So each time I would go into the default under preset and then like, let's say click on drums and then go through each one of them.
I know it's a pain. It's time consuming when you're
so that's
first
the
starting.
only way to do it, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, with
Okay.
this, there are sample libraries where when you click on the name, it'll actually play you like a demo of the sound. You know what I mean? Like you play it and you can hear a note, but this one you have to sort of load it in. Yeah, it's time consuming. But you know what happens is that as you do this, you figure out what your favorite sounds are and you use those. So like I know that this female ooh is a decent sound. Right. So yeah, you just, you know, I would actually just, yeah, I would, you know, finding the sounds might be like something you spend an hour doing and just get the best. I use something similar to those oohs. Yep. Just do the best you can. You know, I don't expect this to be, yeah, I understand how difficult this is when you're first starting out, when you're trying to figure these things out and find the sounds when you don't know. I mean, like the selection is so huge, you know? I mean, this is just pianos and clavinets, right? So I know that this Tremolo Mark I, I like this. But I already know that because I've been using it for a while, you know? Brass and woodwind, you know, yeah, these are useful. I'll just leave it at that. And also, you probably don't know, like, how many of you know what a doumbek is? Right? A doumbek is a Middle Eastern, Greekish kind of instrument. It looks like it's a tube or a cone that gets tiny, and then the drum part opens up to a bigger, wider circle, and it's used for belly dancing and stuff. It's a great instrument. So like they might have instruments in there that you don't know what the name is. So yeah, it does become a bit of an issue. One way that you can make it a little bit easier on yourself is to conceive of an ensemble before you start picking sounds. So okay, so I'm doing a song, so I need a bass, right? I need some sort of drum, and I need a keyboard sound, and I need something to play the melody, right? So therefore, you don't have to go through all those menus. You just have to go to the keyboard menu to find the keyboard sound, right? So if you're just going through sounds and like what's going to inspire me, that could take even longer to try to figure out what sounds you want. So I would make a list of like what kind of an ensemble you want to put together for the first time as you're starting out. There we go. Okay, we're still live, right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so this is one of my film scores, right? And this isn't even a really heavy one. So I've got about 57 instrument tracks. I've got 71 tracks in total. And you notice that I've got things color-coded. So if I were to zoom in on, I'll make these tracks bigger. I've got this set up like an orchestral score. So I've got all my winds are purple, right? And then my brass are these pink colors. And then my percussion are this purplish blue color. Then I've got pitched percussion like piano and harp, which are red. And then all these greens are strings. And then all these other things are other tracks that do other functions for routing and for creating effects and stuff. I see this is not, I don't have that plugin anymore, so I have to add my, great. All right, so let me play this. This is the Norman Lear biopic. I'm going to just play the music without the video. And you can see like how sophisticated you can get with some of this stuff. All right, so let's go right to the opening. Here we go. There's a little dialogue here, right? There's some talking in the film. And then we come back in right here. Right, so this is like just standard things are happening, music, and now we transition. Okay. So just a couple of things, right? You could see that that's like all sorts of tempo changes. The music goes into key changes. There's different orchestrations. But just a couple of things to show you that you'll notice up here on this line here, this green line, like these are all different tempo changes, right? And then on this bluish line, these are all different time signatures. So you can really get incredibly sophisticated. And this line here is my markers letting me know where different things are happening in the film. And if let's just see something here. So you can see that there's activity down here, activity here, right? There's all sorts of stuff here that controllers I've drawn in. I'm not expecting you guys to understand this, but there's more controller data drawn in here. So, it's just, you can get as incredibly sophisticated as you want with this, even in Pro Tools, which is not known as a MIDI heavy sequencer. It's got very powerful MIDI capabilities, and you can do all sorts of amazing things. It just, but I didn't start out doing this. I started out, like, if you were to hear some of the things that I was sequencing in the mid 80s, it's like embarrassing. I wouldn't play it for anybody. So you got to start somewhere, and just, I'm teaching you techniques, so it'll a little bit of a shortcut for you. You don't have to figure out some of these things on your own. And these tools are obviously far more sophisticated than what I started out with. But just do the best you can, and just try to use some of these techniques that we went over in class today, and try to get your first piece finished by next week. All right, just do the best you can, and we'll keep moving on forward after that.